The stage lights blazed brilliantly. Yet the 4 words verification failed flashing on the giant screen glowed blood red. The entire auction hall fell silent, then erupted into whispers. I could hear the mockery, the pity, even the schadenfreude. I stood there gripping my phone, my nails digging into its cold casing as if they wanted to pierce through it. I had warned him. My sixth sense had been screaming about impending disaster, that only this antique inkstone could save the company. I had begged Ha-Du-Tan to transfer 50 million into the account. He had agreed, and yet now I had become the laughingstock of the whole city. I dialed his number once, twice, 3 times, nothing but the long, indifferent beeping tone. Cold sweat slid down my spine. I turned to the auctioneer. Give me 5 minutes. Just as I was about to call my best friend, my phone vibrated. A banking message sent by Ha-Du-Tan's assistant. I opened it quickly, heart pounding, certain it must be an urgent corporate transaction, millions, or at least hundreds of thousands. But no, my eyes locked onto the tiny line of text. Like a sneer on a face, automatic savings deduction -1 yuan and 88 fen. 1.88. My entire world collapsed because of that number. My sixth sense had never been wrong. And this time it was telling me clearly, 7 years of marriage had come to an end. I was born with an unusually sharp sixth sense. Last night I dreamed the company was about to go bankrupt. And in the dream someone said that only by buying an antique inkstone at the upcoming auction could the disaster be averted. The next morning I told my husband to transfer money into the account. But when I went through capital verification for the bidding, the transaction was declined. The moment I saw the note showing 1 yuan and 88 fen deducted by automatic savings, I understood. The 7-year marriage between Ha-Du-Tan and me was over. After leaving the auction house, I went to the hospital for an abortion procedure, then found a lawyer to draft divorce papers. A few days later, when Ha-Du-Tan saw the agreement, he stared blankly and asked, "Honey, are you joking?" The intern at the company accidentally turned on the automatic savings feature. Just because my 50 million account was short 1 yuan and 88 fen. You want a divorce? I answered calmly, yes, exactly because of that 1 yuan and 88 fen. On the giant screen in the auction hall, the 4 red words verification failed blazed, and whispers immediately rippled through the crowd. Their gazes mixed with ridicule and sympathy. Showing off without enough money. Who does she think she is? You must be new here. That's Gun Doan, a regular client of this auction house. Her husband Ha-Du-Tan works in medical equipment. His company's been growing fast. She's never lacked money before. But no one can stand spending like water forever. I bet Ha knew she was here bidding and deliberately didn't transfer the money, teaching her a lesson so she'll stop wasting it. I dialed Ha-Du-Tan's number again, but the phone only replied with the cold message that the subscriber was unavailable. Several society ladies I knew nearby murmured comfortingly, "You're not usually interested in calligraphy pieces. That little inkstone isn't worth that much. The seller probably saw how eager you were and had someone drive up the price. Buying it would just be a loss. Why not stop now, leave the deposit, and withdraw? Losing a little money is better than hurting your marriage." I shook my head. Du-Tan already agreed. Even if I have to sell everything I own, I'll win this bid. He must have had something urgent come up and needed to use the funds. Then I turned to the auctioneer. I must have this item. Please give me 5 minutes to arrange the money. I immediately called Ha-Du-Tan's assistant to confirm the exact shortage. Then switched to dialing Trung Di, my childhood rich best friend. The call connected, and her familiar bright voice rang out. "Hello? Tu Doan. What happened this time? Gun Doan, you're so heartless. Every time you call me, it means something's gone wrong at the Ha household. So tell me, what do you need now?" I answered bluntly, voice steady. "I need to borrow money." "Don't worry, when I secure funds I'll repay triple." Her tone turned serious at once. "I knew it. You were born with a sixth sense, every time you get a premonition. It's right. Ha-Du-Tan must have ignored you again. And now you're stuck like this. I've told you so many times. You should partner with me. At Ha Corp you'll always be behind the scenes. But with me I'll trust your instincts completely. Whatever you say, I'll do. You don't even have a child yet, why not just break up with him? I'll introduce you to my younger brother. The 3 of us will get rich together. What do you say?" Her half-teasing words eased my taut nerves. I was just about to laugh and gently refuse her over-enthusiasm as usual when my phone suddenly vibrated. It was a banking message from Ha-Du-Tan's assistant. I froze slightly. Automatic deduction. I assumed the company had made a major transaction and lost a considerable sum. If that were true, only Trung D could help me scrape together funds in these 5 minutes. But when I opened it, the note read, automatic savings deduction, 1 yuan and 88 fen. Just 1 yuan and 88 fen. At that moment my sixth sense struck again. I understood. The 7-year marriage between Ha Du Tan and me was finished. Seeing my silence, Trung D sighed softly. Fine, my little lucky charm. If you don't want to partner, I won't force you. I know Ha Corp is your life's work. I won't take advantage of this moment to push in. Next time I pick an investment project, just help me review it. Now tell me, how much do you need? I curled my lips slightly. I'm short 1 yuan and 88 fen. The smile at the corner of my mouth was self-mocking, a laugh at myself for always claiming my sixth sense was sharp. Yet in marriage, the one field where any ordinary woman's instincts are most accurate, I had turned out to be the most blind of all. That partnership you mentioned before, I agree. This time Trung D was stunned. Really? I'm thrilled, of course. But doesn't your husband always forbid you from seeing me? He says I'm a bad influence. Aren't you going to ask his opinion? I looked out the window. My voice light but resolute. No need. Very soon, Ha Du Tan won't be my husband anymore. Of course, that 1 yuan and 88 fen didn't require Trung D to transfer anything. I successfully completed the bidding, bought the antique inkstone, and left the auction house. After that I went straight to the hospital for the abortion, then to a lawyer, signed the divorce papers, and brought the documents home. When Ha Du Tan returned and saw me sitting on the sofa clutching my stomach, tears still clinging to the corners of my eyes, he merely curled his lips in a faint smile. Gun Don, you've gone too far. There were 50 million in that card. I never imagined you could spend it all. It was only a bit of loose change short. Yet you called me more than 30 times. I've never scolded you for spending before. This time, for your inkstone, I even contributed most of the money. And when it came to using my own funds, it only deducted 1 yuan and 88 fen and you got this angry? That's really ridiculous. His tone sounded teasing, as if he wanted to coax me out of my temper. But the cheap perfume scent on him only made me nauseous. I had no mood to laugh. I asked directly, voice icy, when you didn't answer the phone. Who were you with? Before he could reply, there was a knock at the door. Several delivery workers came in carrying a pile of large boxes. After they left, Ha Du Tan bent down and carefully opened each one, speaking as he did so with a wounded tone. Did you forget? Today is our 7th wedding anniversary. I asked that intern at the company. La fi, what girls like these days? And I bought everything. I just wanted to surprise you. And you're blaming me instead. I glanced at the scattered heap on the floor, food, cosmetics, clothes, shoes, even little toys of all kinds. The food was all things I hated. The toys were things I was long past caring about. And the clothes and shoes were obviously not my size. I picked up a pair of high heels and smirked faintly. Wrong size. Who were you really planning to give these to? Some little mistress? Ha Du Tan stiffened instantly like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. What nonsense are you talking? That student just kindly helped me choose gifts. The store staff must have mixed them up. Why are you imagining things? I hadn't even said who I meant. But his reaction had already exposed everything. It was La Fi. That kind intern. Ha Du Tan forced a laugh, trying to smooth the tension. He picked up a mango, peeled it skillfully, and held it out to me, his voice softening. Come on, have a bite. It's sweet. I didn't open my mouth. Yet within seconds red welts appeared on my neck and hands. Ha Du Tan started. I forgot, you're allergic. He hurried to the medicine cabinet and took out antihistamines. But when he saw the words not for pregnant women on the instructions, he paused, then gave an awkward smile. His tone mixed with reproach and irritation. All the medicine at home was prepared by you. You're pregnant and allergic, yet you didn't prepare something suitable for yourself? After saying that, he grabbed the car keys. Fine, bear with it a little. I'll take you to the hospital. I said nothing. I simply opened the medicine box, snapped 2 pills in half, and swallowed them dry. Ha Du Tan frowned, his eyes full of displeasure. Before he could speak, I took the divorce papers and a pen from my bag and set them in front of him. Sign. He froze, staring at the document in shock. Don, what did I do wrong? Why do you suddenly want a divorce? I raised my phone before him. On the screen was the bank notice showing the automatic deduction of 1 yuan and 88 fen from the savings account. In an instant Ha Du Tan snatched the paper and tore it into shreds. Honey, what kind of joke is this? Fi was just testing the savings feature and accidentally turned it on. Just because 50 million in the account was short 1 yuan and 88 fen. You want a divorce? I looked at him, my voice calm to the point of chill. Yes, exactly because of 1 yuan and 88 fen. Tearing it is useless. Next time you see me, I'll print another copy. I picked up my bag and prepared to leave. Behind me, Ha Du-tan flushed red with anger. His voice sharp with grievance and spite. You're making a scene just because you want me to fire Fi. Aren't you? She's an intern. If she's dismissed it'll affect her graduation. You're about to be a mother, don't you know to accumulate some virtue for the child in your womb? I drew a deep breath, forcing down the ache rising in my chest. My voice eerily steady. Don't worry, I've already had the child removed. From now on I'm stepping aside. Between you and her there won't be anything in the way. But I suggest she change internship placements. Because Ha Corp won't last until her internship ends. I turned and walked toward the elevator. Ha Du-tan chased after me a few steps. Then stopped at the doorway. His voice rang out behind me, dripping with scorn. Out of ways to threaten me. Are you? Now you're using the company to scare me. Ha Corp has existed 7 years, has anything ever happened? That ridiculous dream you talked about the company collapsing unless you bought some antique inkstone to ward it off, was just a trick to squeeze money from me. I didn't expose you, that's all. The first time I met you I knew you were strange, stubborn, unpleasant. Other than me, no man could stand you long. Go ahead and leave. I'll wait for the day you come back crying and begging me to forgive you. With that he slammed the door so hard the whole apartment shook. I stood still for a moment, then smiled faintly, a smile without tears. Ever since childhood, because I could sense impending misfortune, I'd been treated like a bad omen. Shunned, despised. Ha Du-tan had once been my lover. And also the only friend I had in the world. Before today we had never argued. But now I no longer needed him. 1 yuan and 88 fen was not a special number. Nor a large amount. Yet because of that tiny figure I wanted a divorce. It sounded impulsive, but my sixth sense had never been wrong. After leaving the house, I went to a rental agency to find a place. The agent asked, how many people will be living there? I answered, just one. At that moment my throat tightened. Bitterness impossible to describe, but I reminded myself that before I met Ha Du-tan, I had always been used to doing everything alone. I had never felt loneliness was something to fear. When I was admitted to university, the orphanage director was the one who saw me off at the bus station. She looked relieved, as if a burden had been lifted, and reminded me, when you're out there, watch what you say, don't talk nonsense or people will avoid you again. I remember it clearly. Yet on the 3rd day of freshman year I met the most famous professor at the university. A gentle, kind woman beloved by every student. The very first time I saw her, I sensed a sickly aura surrounding her, a sign of serious illness to come. I only wanted to help, so I advised her to get screened for cancer. She smiled and said she was busy with research and had no time. 3 months later she fainted in class and was rushed to the hospital. The diagnosis, late-stage cancer. A few days after that, she died. Afterward, my 3 roommates began to avoid me. Other students in the department looked at me with fear and contempt. They said it to my face. That girl's bad luck, like a walking curse. When they learned from people at the orphanage that whenever I predicted misfortune it came true. Rumors spread. Behind my back they called me a witch. They believed that if I hadn't cursed the professor, she wouldn't have died. If my mouth weren't poisonous, the tragedies before wouldn't have happened. Only Ha Du-tan, the medical department's golden boy, was willing to speak to me. Whether you say it or not, what's meant to happen will happen. But you chose to speak because you wanted to save people. When superstitious students splashed me with holy water to exorcise evil, soaking me through so I shivered with cold. He was the one who took off his jacket and draped it gently over my shoulders. Don't be afraid, I'll always protect you. Until one day I warned him that his family home was about to catch fire. He didn't hesitate, he booked the nearest flight home. But by the time he arrived, the house had already burned to the ground. His family had been well off. Yet after compensating neighbors for damages they were ruined. Burdened with enormous debt, I had already prepared myself that after this he wouldn't thank me but would blame me like everyone else. Even so, I didn't regret it, because he had treated me kindly and I couldn't ignore a disaster I foresaw. When he returned to school, the first thing he said to me was, "We can't be friends anymore." I merely nodded, voice soft as breath. "I'm sorry." I turned to leave, but he grabbed my hand and pulled me into a small flower shop. using the little money he had left to buy me a bouquet of fresh flowers. He said, his voice so sincere it made my heart tremble. "You're my family's lifesaver. Because you warned me, I called the fire department in time. The house burning doesn't matter. What matters is my family is alive. I want to repay you with my life. Be my girlfriend." I agreed. But his parents had suffered severe burns and needed enormous medical expenses. Not wanting to burden their son, they committed suicide in the hospital. Even though I had warned him beforehand, Ha-Du-Tan still couldn't save his loved ones. The whole campus whispered and mocked him. Serves him right. Who told him to fall for that unlucky girl? Of course his family ended in disaster. He, always gentle and polite, got into a vicious fight that day with those who insulted me. As a result, his right hand was badly injured and from then on he could never hold a surgical scalpel again. Watching him lose his future because of me, I began to doubt myself, wondering if every tragedy truly came from my existence. I once tried to leave him, but he held me tightly, his voice trembling. "I only have you left. You're my lifesaver. As long as we're together, everything will be fine." And so after graduation we married, built a medical equipment company together, and endured countless hardships. By the 7th year after our wedding, the company was listed on the stock exchange, and our life truly began to improve. At first he trusted my premonitions absolutely. He listened to nearly every warning without the slightest doubt. But then he changed. My phone began ringing non-stop. It was Ha-Du-Tan. The shrill ringtone grated on my nerves. I was about to power it off, but my finger slipped and tapped accept. His voice came through, heavy with resentment. "Don, I really miss our college days. Back then I was poor and buried in debt, but our feelings were pure and sincere. In those days, if I gave you a single piece of candy, you'd be happy all day. Now the moment you open your mouth you ask for 50 million. I didn't let him finish. I hung up decisively and blocked the number. Just then Trung Di sent me a link. "These might help you when negotiating the divorce." Her message included a link. I opened it. It was a secondary social media account belonging to Ha-Du-Tan. For the entire month I'd been on a business trip. Every post he made was about the intern La Phi Phi. The new intern mistook me for a fellow intern from her class. Do I really look that young? She's clumsy, keeps making mistakes, then runs to me for help. She's such a troublesome kid, but being around her makes me feel 20 again. Phi Phi spends all her salary every month. When she managed to save 200 yuan she was so happy she treated me to convenience store boxed meals. She's so optimistic and gentle. Unlike Gun Don, that unlucky woman who always looks gloomy. How much money does she need before it's enough? My wedding anniversary happens to fall on Phi Phi's birthday. What a coincidence. I told her to write a birthday wish list, just a bunch of trivial little things. Meanwhile Gun Don opens her mouth and asks for 50 million, claiming it's for the company. I really want to see whether, if I actually touch that account, the company will collapse like she says. I stared at the screen, feeling as if the whole world inside me had collapsed. Yet in a silence so deep it was terrifying. The boy from years ago, the one who trusted me amid all the rumors, the one who took off his jacket to shield me from the rain, had vanished completely. 7 years of marriage had left nothing but suspicion, sarcasm, and betrayal. I lightly pressed a hand to my chest, trying to find again that first flutter of feeling I once had for him. But there was nothing, only emptiness. 4 days later, while Ha-Du-Tan was at work, I took the chance to return home and pack my things. Unexpectedly, the moment I stepped inside, I discovered his luggage was gone. He had moved out one step ahead of me. I was still surprised when a familiar employee from the company sent me screenshots of messages from the internal group chat. The CEO pretended to be an intern for a whole month just to pursue La Phi Phi. Every day he ate cheap boxed lunches in the cafeteria and even told the whole company to keep it secret. So romantic. But Gun Don spending 50 million at an auction is already on the news. They say where money goes, love follows. The CEO and La Phi Phi are probably just playing around. Latest news. I heard from HR that the CEO already told La Phi Phi his real identity and even asked her to live with him. Gun Don must have found out and made a scene, accidentally helping them get together. Now she's just a discarded rich man's wife. Regret won't help her now. Gun Don really has no sense. Spending money like water is one thing, but she's always ordering people around and threatening to fire them. Good thing the CEO endured her for 7 years. Looks like he finally hit his limit. Though honestly La Phi Phi's workability is terrible. Once she becomes the boss's lady, she shouldn't even dream of staying in the company. I read each line, my hands trembling slightly. Back then in the company, Ha-Du-tan and I had agreed never to reveal my ability to foresee disasters. He had agreed without hesitation. Even promised to explain things for me if anyone became suspicious. But in the end, his explanations made employees believe I was useless. That I contributed nothing, only spent money, gave orders, and relied on my husband's power. In their eyes, he was the gentleman who had endured me for 7 years and had finally reached his limit. So even though everyone knew he was cheating, most of the staff still took his side. But by now, I no longer cared. After packing my belongings at home, I went to the company. Besides a freshly printed divorce agreement, I also brought a resignation letter. When I reached the door of Ha-Du-tan's office, through the half-closed glass door I heard a young girl's voice sobbing. I don't want to be the other woman. I really don't. I pushed the door open. Stop crying. I'm here today to get a divorce. Ha-Du-tan was holding La Fai, coaxing her gently. When he saw me, he froze for several seconds, completely unable to react. La Fai's eyes were red. She glanced at him, then turned to me and spoke in a trembling yet proud voice. You don't need to divorce because of me. When I fell in love with Du-tan, I didn't even know he was the CEO of this company. I'm not like those gold-digging women. Between us it's real love. You two don't even have feelings anymore. You just want to keep the title of CEO's wife and his money. If you really need it, we can coexist. She turned to Ha-Du-tan again, her tone theatrical. I won't fight over your property. In the future, Sister Doan can still spend freely with your money. You only need to give me 1 yuan and 88 fen each time. Du-tan, I'll prove that even if you had no money, I'd still love you. Ha-Du-tan had been avoiding my gaze at first, but after hearing her words he suddenly straightened, shielding her behind him, his voice firm. Don't blame Fai. She's young and innocent. It's my fault. I lied and told her I was just a male student from her university. I looked at him for a long time, my eyes lingering on the faint wrinkles at the corners of his mouth, the marks of time and deception. Once, I had believed that was the gentle smile of the man who would protect me all my life. He was 30 now, though well-maintained and indeed younger looking than his age. Saying La Fai mistook him for an undergraduate was a joke fit for the whole world to laugh at. Ha-Du-tan still insisted, his tone frighteningly calm. She didn't know I had a family. She thought I was single. What's wrong with loving me? My gaze drifted to his left hand. The wedding ring was gone, but the indentation on his ring finger was still unmistakable. Did he really believe La Fai hadn't seen it? I had once thought the end of a 7-year marriage would shatter me. Yet at this moment, I only found it laughable. Whether he was being played like a fool or willingly entangling himself for pleasure, I had no interest in exposing him. I took the divorce agreement from my bag, but just then La Fai received a phone call. After listening, she suddenly dropped to her knees in front of me, tears streaming, slapping her own face as she cried. Madam, it's all my fault. I couldn't help falling in love with Du-tan. But I'll leave him immediately. My family is drowning in debt. I'm the only one who can earn money to repay it. Please let me finish my internship and graduate smoothly. Ha-Du-tan immediately helped her up, his eyes full of pity. When he saw on her phone that her internship evaluation result was failed, he turned to me, his gaze filled with disappointment and accusation. Gun Doan, if I hadn't seen this with my own eyes, I wouldn't believe you'd use your identity as the CEO's wife to suppress an intern. Apologize to Fai right now. I pressed my lips together and looked at him without a word. The supervisor responsible for evaluating La Fai was the same person who had complained in the internal chat just yesterday that I fired employees without reason. She had absolutely no motive to curry favor with me by failing La Fai. In other words, he couldn't even distinguish the obvious truth anymore. That evaluator, at least, still had principles. Even knowing La Fai's relationship with Ha-Du-tan, she hadn't changed the result. I had no intention of explaining. I simply took 2 sheets of paper from my bag, the divorce agreement and my resignation letter, and placed them before him. Sign both. From now on you're free. As for the company, I won't interfere anymore. When his eyes passed over the resignation letter, they paused slightly. He glanced at La Fai, suspicion flickering faintly in his gaze. Outside the door, many employees had gathered to watch the drama, their faces eager, caught between pity for La Fai and fascination with my calm defiance. Ha-Du-tan seemed forced into a choice. He drew a deep breath and spoke with self-righteous logic. Fine, I'll sign, But let's be clear and fair. You were the one who went crazy at the auction and demanded divorce just because you were short 1 yuan and 88 fen. At that time Fi and I were only friends. Completely within bounds. I'm not the one at fault. That antique inkstone, if you like it, keep it, I won't fight you for it. But all company shares and other assets belong to me. As compensation for the money you've wasted and the losses you caused over the years. In the hallway, several employees who had always disliked me openly looked delighted. As if they were finally witnessing the hateful boss lady lose everything. They didn't know that all the assets Ha Du-ton claimed together weren't even worth 1/10 the value of that inkstone. And when he chose to give it up, it meant he had personally thrown away the last chance to save the company. I looked at him, calm and cold. I agree. Sign. He immediately called legal to add the property division clause. Then signed both documents without hesitation. After signing, he took a supplementary card from his wallet and handed it to La Fi. This card has no spending limit. Use it however you like. Now nothing stands between us. I won't allow my woman to live in hardship another day. He was clearly speaking to La Fi, yet his eyes rested on me. I simply took the signed papers, put them into my bag, turned, and walked out of the office without another word. When I stood waiting for a ride at the intersection, Ha Du-ton's car passed by. In the passenger seat La Fi leaned close beside him. They soon turned into a large shopping mall. At first she looked shy, but then she followed him into a luxury boutique, her eyes shining as she stared at rows of extravagant clothes. Now he no longer had to restrain himself because of Gun Don. He could freely spend money on that young girl. Yet for some reason, in Ha Du-ton's mind there still lingered the icy look Gun Don had given him before leaving. That gaze had been silent yet sharp, exactly like when they first met. Back then he had fallen drunk on that look. A mysterious, dangerous gaze like a force pulling him into an abyss. He had once offered everything for her, his home, his family, his surgeon's hands, the only future he'd ever planned, just to exchange for a single fleeting glance from her. And now those eyes no longer held him at all. He had investigated that antique inkstone and learned it was overpriced. If resold for 5 million yuan it would already be lucky. In his heart he was certain Gun Don, a woman accustomed to luxury, would eventually regret it. In truth, those unfair property terms had only been proposed because he didn't want a divorce. Now that La Fi stood openly at his side, Ha Du-ton thought that if Gun Don ever regretted it and came back begging, the only option left to her would be to accept sharing him with La Fi. He was still busy imagining the scene of Gun Don tearfully begging him for forgiveness when the giant TV screen in the shopping mall suddenly switched to a news broadcast. On the screen was footage of Gun Don at yesterday's auction. The anchor spoke in an excited voice. The seller of the sky-high-priced antique inkstone has announced he will buy it back at 10 times the price. In just one day, 50 million yuan has turned into 500 million yuan. And the lucky buyer is Ms. Gun. Ha Du-ton froze, his eyes going lifeless as they locked onto the screen. Ann Du-ton, do I look pretty? La Fi stepped out of the fitting room wearing a sparkling brand new dress, twirling proudly, but he gave no response. His gaze was dull, his thoughts in chaos. He lowered his head and opened his phone, about to message Gun Don the way he always used to. Half teasing, half flattering. You really do have an eye. Your first investment and it's already this insanely profitable. Before he could send it, the phone began vibrating non-stop. It was his assistant calling. Voice panicked. President Ha, something's wrong. The medical device our company spent 5 years researching has just been patented first by Company X. Hearing that, Ha Du-ton felt like he'd been struck by lightning. Impossible. This was the most confidential project, known only to the core team. How could it have been leaked to a competitor? The assistant sent over the documents. And every single patent really was registered under Company X's name. His voice trembled as he asked, when Gun Don left the company, did she say anything? The assistant answered, puzzled, after I followed your order and sent her the statement showing -1 yuan and 88 fen. She only replied with one sentence, from now on I won't interfere in the company's affairs anymore. I thought you'd persuade her to come back. But I didn't expect you to sign her resignation right away. Now the procedures are complete. Anyway, she only held a nominal position in the company. You said yourself she came just to kill time. Now that the company's in serious trouble, what use would it be to bring her back? 7 years of entrepreneurship, time and again it had been Gun Don who helped the company escape crises before they could erupt. Now that she was gone, even though the company still had thousands of employees, Ha Du-tan suddenly felt as if he were standing alone against the whole world. He clenched his teeth and ordered. There must be an insider. Lock down all research files and investigate who's been in private contact with Company X. Find evidence for me. After hanging up, he was so anxious he felt like ants were crawling under his skin. He gulped down a mouthful of iced coffee, grabbed his suit jacket, and hurried toward the exit, intending to rush back to the company immediately. But after only a few steps he was stopped by a store clerk. Sir, the clothes your girlfriend tried on have had the tags removed. You haven't paid yet, so you can't leave. Le Phi Phi was still in the fitting room. Irritated, he said, she has a supplementary card. Don't worry, she won't skip out. The clerk still refused to budge, leaving him no choice but to stand there suppressing his temper. He waited for her to come out. In the past, Gun Don had always understood him. She could tell what troubled him just by seeing him frown. Now he thought at least Le Phi Phi would ask what was wrong. But no, the moment she stepped out and heard the sales associate introduce a new line of high-end jewelry, her eyes lit up like stars. She didn't even glance at his pale face before hurrying after the clerk into the VIP room. He stood there watching her retreating figure, while Gun Don's cold voice echoed in his mind from before she left, "Sign. You're free now." A hollow feeling washed over him, and memories surfaced. Yesterday Gun Don had insisted on 50 million to buy that antique inkstone. At the time she'd said it was to suppress bad luck for the company, and now the company really was in trouble. He suddenly realized that all these years, although she spent money extravagantly, every cent had a reason. It had all been for the company. For him, yet he hadn't trusted her. The Ha Group had been the shared life's work of both Ha Du-tan and Gun Don when they chose to start a business in medical devices. At first he'd had only one motive, he wanted to make her happy. Because her sixth sense was so strong. She often saw, ahead of time, the despair of terminal patients before they died. He once thought that if the Ha Group could create devices that saved those people, Gun Don would no longer be called an omen of misfortune but would instead become someone who delivered salvation. She understood his heart, and so for 7 years she had poured all her dedication, intelligence, and youth into this company, while 99% of companies founded at the same time had collapsed. Ha's had stood firm and even grown stronger. Even if their love had faded, at least they had still shared the same ideal. A message from Ha Du-tan. I protected Phi Phi only because I didn't want to affect the internship cooperation program between Ha's and the universities. Don't worry, I won't be like those men who trade in their wives for younger ones after they succeed. You will always be Mrs. Ha. I'll support Phi Phi living outside and won't let her get in your way. The company needs you now. As long as you're willing to turn a blind eye, I'm ready to remarry you. But when he hit send, a bright red exclamation mark appeared. He sent it again, still the red mark. A third time, a fourth. The result didn't change. Gun Don had blocked him. He couldn't believe it. He couldn't believe she could be so absolute. From beginning to end she had never been jealous or angry about his involvement with Le Phi Phi. The reason she divorced him was simply that he had touched the money meant to buy the antique inkstone. The item she believed would save the company. She wasn't angry about his infidelity, she was angry that he had treated the company's future lightly. He kept telling himself that she had taken the inkstone with her after the divorce only to wait for him to bow his head and admit his mistake. Yet now the news that Ha's patent had been snatched away had spread through the medical world. The company was on the brink of collapse. And at its most critical moment she had cut off contact with him. He stared at his phone screen, fingers trembling, one question repeating in his mind, how could she be this resolute? Le Phi Phi walked out of the VIP room wearing a glittering emerald necklace. Seeing his gloomy expression, she nervously tightened her grip on the unlimited card in her hand. Ann Du-tan, what's wrong? Is Kaido mad at you again? It's okay, I have the card now. I can buy whatever I want. You should go comfort her first. The company's patent has already been registered by a competitor. The words slipped out, and he regretted them instantly. What would a girl who hadn't even graduated from college understand about something like this? Saying it would only burden her needlessly. A glint flashed through Le Phi Phi's eyes. In a soft voice, as if speaking unintentionally, she said, I remember Kaido said before leaving that something would happen to the company. Could she have done something behind your back on purpose? The implication was obvious, she was driving a wedge. Of course, young girls in love couldn't avoid jealousy and comparison. But Gun Don had never been like that. Cold, rational, never noisy, Never petulant. Logically he should prefer La Fai Fai's innocence. Yet for some reason his chest tightened with discomfort. He gently patted her head. Voice softening. Don't think nonsense. Just keep shopping. Buy whatever you like. Don't worry about the price. I have urgent business and need to leave first. On the drive back to the company, his gaze drifted unconsciously to the small plush toys La Fai Fai had bought and placed on the dashboard. And he suddenly felt a surge of irritation toward them. He flipped open the convertible roof, letting the cold wind lash straight across his face. The heat of anger in his head gradually cooled. He told himself he only pitied La Fai Fai. She was young and burdened with debt. So he wanted to help her. That was all. The only woman his heart truly acknowledged as his wife was Gun Doan. Even though she had once stormed into the company and made a scene that cost him face in front of the employees. He had never actually considered marrying anyone else. But now, remembering the greedy look in La Fai Fai's eyes and the luxury counter that matched nothing of her earlier claims about pure love untainted by money, all he felt was emptiness and disgust. At the intersection, he turned the car around and decided to go home to see Gun Doan first. In the garage he called his bank's account manager and said he wanted to adjust the supplementary card's limit. He had barely taken a few steps when his phone rang again. It was La Fai Fai, her voice tinged with panic. Anne Du Ton, the card you gave me is supposed to be unlimited. Why did the clerk say I exceeded the limit? Ha Du Ton opened his banking app. On the screen were more than a dozen consecutive luxury purchases. He frowned slightly, rubbed his forehead, and spoke slowly. You said it yourself. As long as I buy Gun Doan one gift. You only need 1 yuan and 88 fen. So I just adjusted the supplementary card's limit. Each swipe can only be up to 1 yuan and 88 fen. Want to buy something? Fine. Just swipe once per item. After saying that, he hung up and took a deep breath. Already arranging sentence after sentence of apology in his mind. He wanted to admit he'd been a fool. That he'd been blinded by a materialistic girl. That the only person he had ever truly trusted was Gun Doan. When he pushed the door open and stepped inside the house, the first thing he saw was the torn wedding photo lying on the living room table. Scraps of paper scattered everywhere. Lamplight reflecting off the smiling faces in the picture. One half was him, the other half was gone. Ha Du Ton couldn't believe Gun Doan had really left. He frantically opened every door in the villa, hoping she would step out of one of the rooms. Just like every time he got upset before, when she would silently soothe him with a gentle look. But there was no one. Only a divorce agreement signed by both of them. And everything that had belonged to Gun Doan had vanished completely. As if she had never existed in this house at all. Scenes from their 7 years of marriage surfaced one after another. Her sixth sense truly was something beyond reason. On the surface she was cold. But in every tiny detail she was gentle and attentive. He had never needed to speak, she always knew what he wanted. At first it made him feel both loved and indulged. But gradually he began to grow tired at work. Whenever he wanted to feel proud of his achievements, Gun Doan would always pour cold water over him. Don't get complacent, Du Ton. When you stop to enjoy yourself, someone else has already started to surpass you. From then on he began avoiding her gaze, afraid she would see through the pettiness in his heart. Then one day he met La Fai Fai, a clumsy, foolish intern who was harshly scolded for mistakes at work. She looked up at him, eyes brimming with tears, voice trembling. An oi, the others in my group are isolating me. Can you help me? In that moment his heart stirred. But now that he looked back, it wasn't love, it was just that he remembered how years ago Gun Doan had also been fragile. Had also needed him like that. Their 7th wedding anniversary happened to fall on La Fai Fai's 22nd birthday. For the first time in his life, when Gun Doan called him, he didn't answer. He was strolling with La Fai Fai under the dazzling lights of the mall and deliberately let the 1 yuan and 88 fen deduction message appear on the statement for her to see. Just a tiny gesture, but even he hadn't expected that number would become the figure that closed the book on their 7-year marriage. He never imagined she would actually ask for a divorce on a night he didn't come home. In a fit of anger, he had confessed his feelings to La Fai Fai and even suggested they live together. If he could go back once more, he definitely wouldn't gamble with Gun Doan out of wounded pride. He wouldn't sign the divorce papers. And he certainly would never have agreed to let her resign and leave the company. His phone rang. Ha Du Ton hurried to answer, thinking it was her calling. But it was his assistant instead. President Ha, about Company X registering the patent first, Detective 2 has found a lead. He opened the message. On the screen was a photo taken outside Company X's building. In the picture were Gun Don and another woman standing side by side, talking and smiling. He zoomed in and recognized her immediately. It was Trung Di, Gun Don's best friend. Back in college, to repay family debts, he and Gun Don had run small businesses together. That was when they met Trung Di, a rich young heiress. She was wealthy but unbelievably unlucky. She lost at every game. Every stock she bought crashed. Every project she invested in exploded. Until one time she was almost tricked by a handsome con artist. And Gun Don pointed out his true nature on the spot. From then on, Trung Di treated her as a life-saving benefactor. She used to joke that she wanted to start a company with Gun Don and even marry off her younger brother to her. Ha Du Tan had originally planned to wait until his debts were paid before proposing. But because of that noisy matchmaking incident, he hurriedly proposed to Gun Don instead. After graduation they registered their marriage right away. Later Trung Di's family emigrated overseas. And every year on their anniversary she would send emails teasing him. If you dare betray my goddess of fortune, I'll find a charming man to steal her away. Those words had once made his spine run cold. Years ago he had blocked her contact. He never expected that now she had returned to the country and reconnected with Gun Don. His first reaction wasn't anger that Gun Don might have leaked company secrets for revenge. It was joy. At last he had a clue about her. He opened his blocked list, found Trung Di's number, and called. Trung Di, you sharp-tongued woman. You can't find a husband so you can't stand seeing others happy. Is that it? Gun Don suddenly asked for a divorce. It must be your doing. What exactly are you plotting? There was silence on the other end for a moment. Then a cold, bitter laugh. Yesterday your company hadn't even run into trouble yet. And Gun Don had to borrow 1 yuan and 88 fen from me. I knew right away you'd done something to wrong her again. I checked online. And sure enough I was right. The internet is full of your sweet little love diary with that pretty intern. It's so sugary it's nauseating. He rushed to defend himself. I only wanted to make her jealous. I thought she only cared about the company and money. So I posted those things on purpose. Trung Di sighed, her voice dripping with sarcasm. You still don't understand who you are. Back then the orphanage director spread rumors to isolate her so he could exploit her ability. And you took advantage of that moment to make her confuse dependence with love. I'm her closest friend. If I'd really wanted to ruin things, you two would never have made it to marriage. But what about you, Ha Du Tan? All these years at Ha's. How many times did you pretend to agree with her on the surface while secretly opposing her behind her back? Every time you caused trouble you called it an accident. And every single time it was Gun Don who asked me to step in and clean up your mess. Her words were as sharp as blades, each one slicing into the last layer of his pride. He gripped the phone tightly, palm slick with sweat, and suddenly realized that even when she silently forgave him, the one protecting him behind the scenes had always been Gun Don. I gave you your chance. Who told you to be blind enough to let a goddess of fortune slip out of your hands? What you're facing now is exactly what you deserve. Those were Trung Di's last words before she hung up. It was the first time Ha Du Tan had heard that Gun Don had once begged Trung Di for help to save Ha's company. His face flushed red with shame. I just want to see her once. Explain that I don't have any other woman. But on the other end Trung Di replied coldly. She's already agreed to marry my younger brother. From now on, please don't harass my future sister-in-law. The line went dead. He couldn't believe it. Only 1 day had passed. Yet Gun Don could already abandon a 7-year marriage and agree to marry a man she'd only met a few times. Ha Du Tan clenched his wineglass. His chest filled with confusion and pain. Despite his hepatitis, he opened the liquor cabinet, poured a full glass, and drank it down gulp after gulp until alcohol drowned out reason. He vaguely thought that if Gun Don could feel his pain, if she knew he was destroying himself, she would come back to him. At noon the next day, his phone rang shrilly. His assistant called an urgency. President Ha, something's wrong. Several major contracts have reached payment deadlines. But the system shows deduction failures. His first reaction was that Trung Di was playing tricks again. He immediately called the bank. But the result left him stunned. The account had been temporarily frozen for exceeding transaction frequency limits. Scrolling through the transaction history, he saw hundreds of repeated entries of the same number, 1 yuan and 88 fen. He instantly understood, it was La Phi Phi. She was retaliating, deliberately swiping the supplementary card repeatedly to trigger a freeze on the main account. He hurriedly contacted partners, asking them to extend payment deadlines. But they replied coldly, if a company can't even process payments correctly, How can we still trust it as a partner? The call ended. In the empty office, only his ragged breathing and hollow stare remained. The man who once stood proudly at the peak now had nothing left except the number 1.88. Not only did the partners refuse extensions, they demanded breach of contract compensation and terminated all future cooperation. Ha Du-tan rushed back to the company to assess the situation. But as he passed the employee lounge, he heard hushed gossip drifting out. No wonder Gun-don withdrew early with all the trouble happening. Talk about foresight. I heard she's about to join a rival company. Haas isn't bankrupt yet, and now La Fai's the president's wife, better than working under Gun-don. I even heard that when she left she said, soon Haas won't exist anymore. Maybe her bad omen words will come true again. Bang! The door slammed open as Ha Du-tan shoved it hard. His eyes were bloodshot, voice hoarse with fury. Shut up, all of you. Gun-don is not a bad omen. She's Ha's benefactor. She's the one who saved this company again and again. She will never abandon Haas, and she will never abandon me. As long as she's here, Haas will definitely overcome everything. The lounge fell into dead silence, no one dared breathe loudly. But beyond the transparent glass wall, on the finance department's electronic board, Ha's stock chart was plunging straight down. After he left, whispers erupted again. And what is La Fai anyway? She's incompetent. Even buying equipment she messes up. If she weren't marrying the president, would I bother flattering her? Honestly, Gun-don really was impressive. Back then I thought she was giving random orders. But later everything proved she was right. And those employees she fired before, I checked. They were all commercial spies planted by Company X. Must be coincidence. Gun-don isn't a fortune teller who can predict everything. But at that moment Ha Du-tan's phone kept ringing non-stop. All calls from La Fai. He was busy trying to prove his loyalty to Gun-don. Determined to cut ties with La Fai completely. So he didn't answer, he even blocked her number. He never expected that she would exploit the access he had once granted her. Storm into the president's office. And steal his backup bank cards. Long ago Gun-don had warned him not to use the same password for every account. But he'd found it annoying and never listened. The result was that all his bank cards were drained and frozen. And his other investments stalled in a chain reaction. The entire company fell into chaos. For the first time in 7 years, Ha Du-tan had to humble himself and beg partners for help. But all he got were cold refusals. Just when despair was closing in, his assistant delivered good news. President Ha, I found President Gun's address. He rushed to a small cafe in front of an investment firm's building. Gun-don was sitting with several partners. Her expression radiant, her gaze confident, her smile gentle. She was beautiful, poised, free, completely different from the woman who had silently endured beside him for 7 years. Ha Du-tan stood outside staring at her in a daze, as if the world around him had vanished. Only after she finished seeing her guests off did he step forward. Voice trembling. Gun-don, I knew it. You've never misjudged anything. I saw the news. The seller of that inkstone is willing to buy it back for 10 times the price. 500 million can definitely save the company. I won't blame you even if you leaked the patent secret to Company X. Can we get back together? I smiled faintly, took out my phone, and opened a photo. In the image, the antique inkstone that someone had offered 500 million yuan to repurchase lay split cleanly in two on a marble floor. Ha Du-tan's face turned pale instantly, while I continued smiling gently. They were willing to pay 500 million because its value far exceeded that number. Its true worth wasn't in its form, but in the secret prescription of an ancient physician hidden inside. According to that formula, I ran trials. The results are extremely promising. It can treat many incurable diseases. Many major pharmaceutical groups have already expressed interest. Trung D and I went to Company X to discuss cooperation. But then I changed my mind. I chose to raise capital myself and start my own company. As for the patent leak, it has nothing to do with me. If you don't believe me, check the conference room equipment system at your company. I finished speaking in a voice light as wind. Yet every word fell into his chest like stone. My eyes were still clear and calm. No resentment left, only absolute detachment. The distance between someone who had already walked away and someone who still refused to wake up. Only then did Ha Du-tan suddenly remember that the company's conference rooms had recently replaced all their projection equipment. At the time he'd wanted to give La Fai a chance to earn a commission. So he'd chosen the supplier she recommended. In her internship report, the reason she'd been graded as failing was precisely because she'd taken kickbacks. He had assumed the evaluator was Gun Don's person deliberately targeting her. So he fired that employee the very same day Gun Don left. He never imagined the equipment La Phi Phi purchased would be the cause of the patent secrets being stolen. Panicked, he called La Phi Phi, but her number had already been cancelled. In his confusion he could only turn back to beg Gun Don. He had never touched La Phi Phi, he'd only pitied her because her family was in debt. He'd investigated, everything was fake. Lies she made up to win his sympathy. Don, you're about to start a new company. You'll need a new team. Why not come back to Haas? I'll help you. I shook my head, voice calm. Haas is in such trouble now. I don't want to be involved anymore. And that employee you fired that day, I just invited her back as HR director to help me recruit. Seeing how resolute I was, Ha Du Tan lowered his head, voice trembling like a plea. The child in your womb can't be without a father. Before, I was resentful that every major company decision came from you. So I deliberately ignored your contributions in front of the staff. Now I understand. I'll never do that again. Haas is the dream of both of us. As long as you're willing to save the company. Even if I have to stay home and take care of you and the child from now on. I won't complain. He lifted his head, eyes red, but facing him, I only smiled softly in silence. My gaze tranquil as if everything had ended long ago. I spoke slowly. I told you, I already terminated the pregnancy. Ha Du Tan's eyes widened, pupils shrinking in panic. How can you be so cruel? I was wrong. You can hate me, hurt me, but why kill our child? I shook my head gently. My decision had nothing to do with you. As the fetus grew, I realized my sixth sense was weakening. If the baby were born, I would become an ordinary person. At first I was happy, thinking I could finally escape the burden of this ability. But then I realized I couldn't bear it. Just then, on the cafe television screen, the news reported an earthquake where hundreds had been saved thanks to an anonymous person who predicted it in advance. I smiled, a light, peaceful smile. It had taken me a long time to understand that my ability wasn't a burden but a gift I should use to help others. My phone vibrated with a message from Trung Di. Are you free tonight? Come watch my younger brother perform. The video she attached showed firm muscles moving to music. Stage lights washing over warm skin. I glanced at it and then said to Ha Du Tan, I understand you. Youthful charm really is hard to resist. He frowned, about to argue that he'd never touched La Phi Phi. I gave a soft laugh. Voice calm. Sooner or later, my sixth sense has never been wrong. Only after letting go of everything did I truly learn to enjoy the simple joys of life. Half a year later, while I was on a date with Trung Di's younger brother, sunlight scattering gold across the waves, my phone rang. It was Trung Di, her voice brimming with excitement. The ancient formula you found in the inkstone just finished its first clinical trial phase. The results are outstanding. Investors have poured in more funding. Your company's about to rise to a whole new level. I looked out at the sea. Wind brushing my hair, my heart light as clouds, peaceful. Free. Finished. I unlocked my phone and scrolled past a breaking social news alert. It reported that La Phi Phi had been expelled from her university for embezzlement during her internship. The supplier she'd introduced turned out to be an agent of Company X who had secretly installed spy cameras inside the equipment Haas purchased. And just as I had foreseen, she really had slept with Ha Du Tan. She became pregnant, but because he signed a waiver letter, she avoided prosecution and escaped prison. Although Ha Du Tan won the lawsuit against Company X, Haas still declared bankruptcy. He received only a small compensation payment and planned to use it to start over. But La Phi Phi didn't keep her promise to endure hardship with him. Instead, she seized the money and ran away. Once again, they made front-page news together. Tangled in scandal after scandal. A vicious cycle with no exit. After reading it, I let out a faint sigh. There was no anger left in me. Only a cool sense of reflection. If that day he hadn't touched the money meant to buy the inkstone, if he hadn't been short that 1 yuan and 88 fen, perhaps they would never have fallen to such an ending. That's the end of today's story. If you enjoyed it, please like the video, subscribe to China Story Tales, and stay tuned for more stories.